Thank you, sir, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed my privilege and pleasure to address the distinguished gathering of HR professionals from not just across the country, but there are people from outside India also who are there. And I would like to thank World HRD Congress and Mr. R.L. Bhatia for this opportunity. My name is Kinjal Choudhary, and as you know, I am the Global HR President for Cadila Pharmaceuticals. Now, it is very important to understand when we speak of performance with culture. I don't know how many of you have read the book of Jim Collins, Good to Great or Built to Last. Now, there are very few companies which last more than 5 years or 10 years. Now, I represent an organization which has been in existence for more than 70 years, 73 years to be precise. It is an organization which is the first Indian pharmaceutical company post-independence. And it continues to survive, and not just survive, but thrive and do well today. And that's not a mean achievement. That does not happen everywhere. There are handful of companies which have survived for more than 7 decades and who have been doing well. Now, the reason an organization does well decade after decade, year after year, is not because it makes profits, not because it meets the top line. Those, of course, it does. I mean, that's the basic reason why a business would exist. But what is even more important is that the organization has a purpose. The organization has a reason for existence which transcends the mere, objective of making money. And that's where I come from. That's an organization whose HR I'm privileged and honored to head. Is the organization has a purpose of providing affordable and quality medicine to every person in the country and beyond. Now, that's a purpose with which this organization has served for last several decades, as I mentioned, and that is the reason if, employees who have been in this organization have been there because they echo the ethos, they echo the spirit of this organization. If the purpose of the organization does not match with the purpose of the individuals working there, there is going to be an organ rejection. It's not going to last very long. And this is an organization, Cadila Pharmaceuticals as I speak, where every 5th or 6th person has spent more than a decade, has spent more than 10 years in the company. And that's not a small thing in today's world where every 2 years there is a churn that happens. It's not a mean achievement for an organization to have every 5th employee having spent more than 6-7 years and every 6th employee more than 10 years. So that is because the organization goes beyond what the mere this thing is. Over decades, our organization has followed certain unwritten principles of people management, which, we have used the term performance with purpose. I enunciate those principles which have traditionally been followed in the organization by generations of leaders, not just leadership of today, but leadership over generation. Sine qua non for creating an employee-centric workplace, as we all know, being from HR, where employees feel valued, they feel secure about their job, they feel respected, and they feel it's a place where their professional development would be taken care of. We all know as HR that HR can facilitate. As somebody told me once, that you can take the horse to the water. You can hold the horse's neck 2 inches above the water. But ultimately, it is the horse which has to drink the water. So HR can facilitate, HR can provide all the means, but ultimately it is the line managers, it is the business leaders who have to take the ownership of their people, who have to own their people, who have to consider the people as their resources in the true sense, and it's them who have to lead the organization, not just use people as resources to be utilized or to be exploited, but more importantly, resources who are actually the future of the organization. So that's where, this organization has focused on. I'll just name a few of them. So for instance, diversity, equity and inclusion. Now this is a term which is very commonly used today, and I doubt if there is anybody in this room who has not heard of this term. But this is something which has been used in practice, not in terms of the name per se. In practice, this has been used for decades in this organization. Diversity without inclusion doesn't work. Many of us over here, or many of you, I am not an expert, but many of you would be experts in diversity and inclusion and equity, would know that diversity and inclusion go hand in hand. And unless people feel included, unless people from diverse background, diverse gender, diverse socio-economic, cultural background feel included, that diversity is not going to last very long. So it is important as an organization, and that's what Cadila has done over decades, to make people feel included and not just have a diversity just to meet a numeric target. We have leadership positions, not just in HR. HR, as you see, we don't have a woman leader as I speak, otherwise I would not be standing here. But there are other functions where we have diversity in every manner, not just gender diversity. Many of the leadership positions in our organizations are held by women. There are women who have spent decades working in the organization, be it regulatory affairs, be it legal, be it procurement, purchase, sales, marketing, name the function. And there are people, R&D, there are people who have been there for 2 decades, 2.5 decades, so on and so forth. Without formally using the term diversity, equity and inclusion, this is something which has been followed. The second principle that I would say that this organization has followed religiously is focusing on recruitment. Now, we all do recruitment, we all know the basics of recruitment, given a job description, get some profiles, interview them, select them. But the principle that is followed in Cadila over decades is, how do we ensure that the person walking in through the door has a caliber, has the competence which is beyond the average competence of the people inside the organization. Now, if we consistently follow that principle of focusing on getting people who are better than the average talent existing, then over a period of time, the quality of talent improves in the organization. And that is something that has been religiously and relentlessly followed here. The second thing that I would say is the principle which our chairman and managing director consistently talks about is induction, inclusion of people. When a new person comes in, we have all moved into new companies sometime or the other in our organization, and we would have seen dozens and scores of people walking in. Have we ever come across a person who comes into a company knowing and thinking that I'm going to royally screw up my job over here? I doubt it. There would be nobody. Everybody walks into a new company thinking that he or she will do a very good job. But something happens from the day he or she comes to the company, and over a period of next few months, few years, that things don't go well at times. And that is the responsibility lies to a large extent, and that's a philosophy that Cadila has. It is with the organization. It is the organization's responsibility to select the right person, and having selected the right person, we need to ensure that the person is given the goals, given the objectives, given the clear description of what he or she needs to do, provide regular feedback, ensure that the person is feeling comfortable in the job, provide the necessary kind of a support system without using the fancy words of buddy and all of that, but ensure that the person has the necessary kind of a support system so that the person stays and does well in the organization. The third principle, as I said, is providing a clear direction. Many of us, I have seen in my organizations, my experience over 28 years now, that there are many times when people do not have clear goals. People do not have clear objectives. They know they have to do something. They are aware of certain broad areas, but if you ask them specifically what is expected of them in the smart manner, they will kind of falter. It's not very clear. It's not their fault. The fault is that the organization, the manager's manager has not spent time in adequately explaining what that person is meant to do. On an average, if a person knows what he or she is meant to do, and then the chances are, if we have got the right person, the job will happen well. Somebody just before lunch, quoted Jack Welch as execution. Execution falters not because the competence of the person. Generally, it falters because the person does not know in which direction to row. Sometimes rowing in this direction, sometimes rowing in the other direction, doesn't know where to go, and therefore the boat kind of swirls in the water. So providing clear direction, providing specific this thing is something which is the very important thing for the organization, and that is what. The couple of other things that I will speak about in the last 2 minutes is in terms of ownership of people. Every manager in the organization is given the task of owning his people. And that's what we strictly follow. And that has given us the result of making Cadila one of the best pharmaceutical companies in the country to work for. One needs to be inside to see and feel how it is inside to work. And that's a great place to be in. Thank you very much once again for your audience. Thank you for your time.